Hey guys, me again, you know who I am, and today I'm going to be here with the Saryn rework, or Saryn 3.0, whatever you really care to call it, and I'm going to be going through her abilities and showing you what they do, and there are certain things and interactions that have been removed, and sort of new ones, synergies that have been added. Like for instance, there are a couple ways that spores don't spread anymore. AoE, like concealed explosives, the Ogress, or even the Scourge, will not break the spores at all, like they used to. Gas clouds will not break spores, so things like the Torrid or the Mutilacernos, those will not break spores, and even if you do get a direct hit with the spores, which is what does pop spores, it doesn't always hit, and I found this to be the worst way to spread spores in general, even with Toxic Lash activated. Gas procs no longer pop all the spores on a single person anymore, and Molt no longer procs spores, spread spores when it dies. But here's what does spread spores. So kills do indeed spread spores still, albeit at a reduced range, just like Saryn 2.0. Toxic Lash, you can get a hit anywhere on the body with Toxic Lash, and it will spread spores. You don't even have to pop the spore. You can just shoot their body. Doesn't matter what weapon, and it spreads the spores like normally. And weapons with conal AOEs, like the Archoplasmor and the Ignis, will also break spores. More on the Ignis later. Toxic Lash got a nice buff. Spores as corrosive is kind of weird, but Saryn has basically been retooled. She's no longer a debuff frame that paired well with Nova. She's sort of like a corrosive projection killer, as once she's in the squad, she makes corrosive projection absolutely worthless because of the amount of armor you can remove very fast, and even faster with power strength, though it's like slightly faster. You can strip armor with having negative power strength, so that's not a big deal. And miasma is still garbage. So yeah, so we're gonna spawn in 20 level 155 heavy gunners, and let's just spawn them in. And if I press select one target here with spores, and if I try to select another target, it will actually detonate the previous target's spores, and it will only do like one at a time. So you can't manually put spores on multiple targets anymore. So what do you want to use with Saryn now? Basically, your only thing that's really changed is Ignis is still good with Saryn, but you want to switch your elemental combo around for, instead of gas, because like I said, it doesn't spread spores anymore, you want to use viral to make up for what used to be old Saryn, which is the debuff Saryn, and that will help your damage tremendously, as the AoE spores, you can spread them, and Ignis has a big enough hitbox where it kind of covers the whole body and shoots off the spores pretty easily without really any effort. So spreading spores is super easy with the Ignis, and then getting that viral, getting that slash, and then if you have Toxic Lash on, getting that toxin proc as well as the corrosive proc is silly. I did show you that the Haiku Prime couldn't spread spores with concealed explosives. However, as soon as I activate Toxic Lash, it spreads them, which is odd. It's a weird thing, but Toxic Lash is probably the easiest way to spread spores, like I was kind of concerned it would be. And so, like, if you're going to be using concealed explosives to spread spores, there are better weapons you can use. Like, you can use melee weapon like Skoldak. But like I said, without Toxic Lash, Ignis is your best bet. Hit him with that viral proc from the Ignis, and then just spread the spores around. And I see that spread around pretty nicely. And then we do damage. Very, very nice damage. That armor is gone. And because the armor is gone, that's why we're not running for corrosive anymore, because the spores strip the armor very, very fast. And they do the armor stripping for us. Now, Toxic Lash is really, really good. Especially with shotguns and beam weapons. Those are super, super, super good with Saryn, because the little toxin goes a long way, especially since it stacks. Think of it like a fire proc, but it stacks and has a bonus against armor. It ignores shields. And that's kind of what makes up for the whole weakness that spores has, especially against shields. So I'm going to show you a bunch of corpus techs. And I'm going to spread spores around. Just going to shoot the spores so everyone's infected here. And we're gonna wait, because since spores isn't like viral, it doesn't have their health. and it doesn't. And since it's corrosive, it has a negative against their proto shields. I think they have proto shields. I could be wrong, but they're a little resistant to corrosive. And since they have the shield osprey in their back pocket, basically, they can basically refresh their shields and sort of tank this for quite a while until the damage gets really, really high. These guys are actually taking health damage finally. But like I said, these guys have a lot of health. Okay, shield guys are gone, and now they're coming back up. And so they're able to tank a little bit more of my spores, and that's kind of like a small issue I have with the spores being corrosive. But at the same time, it's fine because it removes armor at a huge rate, and now we're finally getting kills on these guys. So that's the only issue I have with spores. However, that's made up completely by Toxic Lash, and I'll just show you that. Though my build doesn't have the best duration on it, I'll just spawn in one of these guys to show you. Just show you our damage here. So I pop Toxic Lash, and then I have the Viral on my Ignis, and then the Slash from Honey Munitions, and it destroys them. It evaporates them. They die really, really fast. And so you won't even have to worry about switching elemental combos on Saryn at all, because you have Toxin that ignores shields, and you have Spores that spread to armor. And if we just spawn in the horde of heavy gunners here, I'm sure that Toxic Lash, even though I don't have a whole lot of duration, in fact I have like the lowest duration you can have on Saryn right now, and I'll explain that in a minute. But pop Toxic Lash, I spread all those spores, I get those toxin procs on these guys with the Viral and the Slash. And as you can see, that really, really hurts them. If I can get them all on the line here, makes it even better, though my gun is a little... Okay, it will fix itself. That's Toxin, Viral, Slash, and the corrosive from the spores is stripping their armor. So that's easy clap right there. Now you're probably wondering why I have negative duration. So here's my build. Pablo said on Primetime when he revealed all this is that he didn't want to have dump stats on the new Saryn, but the thing is, you can build her like Saryn 1.0 and it works really, really well, because the more power strength means I get more status chance on my spores, which means it strips the armor quicker. Now you can also go with negative power strength, and that also works pretty good. And I use both of these in Elite Onslaught. This one came out on top, but I had to recast spores so much because of enemies were just dying too quickly. And before you say, because I know I'm going to get this question, why I'm using Steel Charge over, say, Growing Power, which adds power strength on status effects. This does not work with any of Saryn's abilities, not even Toxic Lash. So I can show you this real fast. So we're going to take a weapon here with 0% status chance that I have Riven for my kunai. And it gives me a ton of damage, but like no status chance. So I'm going to show you. So alright, press my 1, didn't proc. If I hit a spore here, this guys won't stop moving out of the way. So I hit a spore, that didn't proc growing power. If I use Molten, they kill it. That didn't proc growing power. Use Toxic Lash. That does not proc growing power. And if I use Miasma, that does not proc growing power at all. And you see the Viral proc sort of stayed on them for quite a while. And it doesn't look like the Viral proc on Miasma is affected by duration, as you can see. Which is why I don't have a whole lot of duration. And duration really only affects like Toxic Lash, but Toxic Lash, you could use it once and you'd spread it to like every enemy on the entire map. So you don't even have to use it that much, but it's a nice damage buff. So like, as much as I want to have like a little bit more duration on my Saryn build, this works fine. Well, this is like an old Saryn build, like where when Miasma did like 40k damage, alright, way back then, and it 2-tapped fucking, or 1-tapped Bombards at level 50-60. Now since you can get Toxic Lash applies to all your weapons, you can get the best combo in the game, elemental combo game, which is Corrosive, Viral, and Toxin. Crazy weapon combos like that, and that's why I use the Ignis, and since it's the beam weapons, or the Soma Prime, for instance, and the Baza work pretty well with the new Toxic Lash. And Synapse in particular works very well. So I have Corrosive Viral on here because it has innate corrosive damage, and then I just put Viral on it. We're just going to spawn into one Heavy Gunner here. And we're going to pop Toxic Lash. And they're gone. But it does do very, very nice amount of damage as it adds damage and the status proc, which is very, very, very nice. And it works pretty well on weapons with Maiming Strike, which I have. I have my Skoliak. So for those of you who thought Skoliak and those were dead because of the line of sight change got added, they're pretty strong with Saryn. You can just stack up your Toxin and your Slash procs and whatever. And they're doing very, very high damage. As you can see there. Very, very strong Toxin procs on the enemy. And even more so with spores, because that removes like the armor of these guys. So I'm gonna go kill these guys real fast and show you what that looks like. So, using Toxic Lash again, just gonna cast spores. And then spin to win. These guys are already dead. On to the next guys. Escalating damage with the armor strip. Really, really helps out my weapon here. Oh, I ran out of... That guy's no armor. So yeah. While duration is nice on Saryn, it really only really is a thing for really Toxic Lash and Toxic Lash only. And even then, since it's like cheap now, you don't have to cast spores a ton. And since you can no longer manually spread spores to multiple targets, you can cast Toxic Lash a lot and it'll be fine. So it doesn't even matter that much. And that's why my build is the way it is. And it just clears hordes and hordes of enemies, especially in Elite Onslaught mode. And I think this definitely made Saryn better in Elite Onslaught mode, but everywhere else she's kind of the same. But she's definitely going to be one of those picks for endurance runs. While she doesn't have that viral and with Nova to make the quad damage, the AoE armor strip means that corrosive projection is kind of just going to be dead in the water and not really a requirement, because you can just strip the armor, or if there's a sortie with augmented enemy armor, then you're going to want to take in Saryn, without a doubt, and just spread spores everywhere and remove the armor. It's not going to be a problem at all for you. But yeah, that was all for me, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.